Have you ever wondered what really happens inside your liver if you don't take care of it? Did you know the single organ performs more than 500 life-sustaining jobs every single day? And here's the shocking part. The biggest danger to your liver isn't always alcohol, it's often the everyday foods on your plate. Hello health champions, I'm Dr. Nana, and today I want to help you finally understand the truth about fatty liver disease. This is a liver. When it's healthy, it's your body's ultimate detox system, filtering out toxins and keeping your metabolism running smoothly. But if you neglect it, it can gradually turn into a fatty liver, then cirrhosis, and eventually liver failure. And here's the hard truth. Most fatty liver cases today aren't from alcohol, they're from what you eat. I hear it all the time. People feel frustrated and overwhelmed by conflicting advice online. YouTube is full of videos on this subject, but so many are either incomplete or just plain wrong. That's why in this video, I'm going to cut through the noise, explain how fatty liver actually develops, and give you clear steps to protect yourself. But before we get into solutions, we first need to talk about what not to eat. This is where a lot of myths and misconceptions live. For example, one common claim is that you should avoid salt because sodium causes water retention. Now, that's only true if your body can't regulate sodium, like if you have a hormonal disorder, an endocrine tumor, or kidney failure. For the average healthy person, sodium itself isn't the cause of fatty liver, so that advice is misleading. Then there's added sugar, and here, I couldn't agree more. Added sugar absolutely drives up liver fat, and we'll dive deeper into that in a moment. Another big target is red meat. People say avoid it because it's high in saturated fat. Well, yes, it is, but that's not actually the problem. The science here is often misunderstood, and I'll explain why shortly. And of course, we can't forget about fried foods. Now, this one deserves a little nuance. The real issue isn't the calories or even the fat itself, it's the oils being used. Almost all fried foods rely on vegetable oils, which are unstable at high heat. To make them usable, food companies process them, bleach them, and deodorize them. The end result? Oils that are toxic and rancid, and that's why fried foods can be harmful. But if you occasionally fry with something stable, like coconut oil or lard, that's a different story. Here's where people often get confused. The old saying, "You are what you eat." It sounds logical, but it's not really true. Think about it, cows have plenty of saturated fat in their tissues, but cows don't eat saturated fat, they eat grass. Through a process called biotransformation, that grass turns into saturated fat inside the cow's body. The same principle applies to humans. The saturated fat stored in our bodies doesn't necessarily come from the saturated fat we eat, it's created when we eat excess fuel, and especially when that fuel is combined with excess insulin. Insulin is the storage hormone, and when it's constantly elevated, it drives fat storage in the liver. That's how we end up with fatty liver, not simply because we ate a steak. So yes, studies show that a liver full of saturated fat is insulin resistant, but the fat is the result of insulin resistance, not the cause. It's the excess calories, the constant flood of insulin, and the overload of fuel that overwhelm the liver and create the problem. And that brings us to the core issue, overwhelm. Your liver becomes fatty when it has more work to do than it can possibly handle. Every time you overload it with substances that only the liver can process, it gets congested. That's when trouble begins. Now that we've cleared up some of these misconceptions, let's move forward and uncover the deeper truth about what's really driving fatty liver, and that's exactly where we'll begin in page next. The real problem with fatty liver isn't simply about eating fat, it's about overwhelming the liver with too much work. When the liver becomes congested, it can't keep up. Let's now look more closely at the substances that clog it up the fastest. The first, of course, is alcohol. Everyone knows this one, which is why alcohol is so heavily regulated. It's restricted by age, limited by law, and even culturally. We warn people to drink responsibly. We don't hand it to children, and for good reason. Alcohol is a toxin that only the liver can break down. But here's the twist. While people are quick to point to alcohol as the villain, far fewer realize there's another substance just as damaging and in some ways, even sneakier. That substance is fructose. Most people have heard about sugar being bad. They'll nod along when doctors warn about sweets, soda, and desserts. But few truly understand why. The hidden danger of sugar lies in its makeup. White table sugar is made of 50% glucose and 50% fructose. And it's the fructose part that's especially dangerous for your liver. Think about it this way. If you eat 100 grams of sugar in a day, a shockingly common amount for many Americans, you're dumping 50 grams of pure fructose into your liver. And unlike glucose, which many of your cells can use for energy, fructose can only be processed by the liver. That means it becomes a direct burden, piling onto the same organ already struggling with alcohol and toxins. No wonder it clogs up so quickly. And speaking of toxins, that's the third category the liver has to deal with. Its primary job is to clean the blood, neutralize chemicals, and break down toxins. But imagine trying to keep your kitchen clean if someone keeps dumping trash bags on the floor faster than you can take them out. That's exactly what happens inside your body. When the liver is already overworked from alcohol and fructose, its ability to detoxify plummets. The toxins don't disappear, they build up. Now, there's a fourth piece of this puzzle: insulin. Insulin by itself isn't what causes fatty liver. But when the liver is already overloaded with fat and we live in a way that keeps insulin constantly high, insulin becomes the aggravator, the fuel to the fire. Insulin is a storage hormone designed to keep fat locked in. So if your insulin levels are high, your liver can't burn through its fat stores. The fat just sits there trapped, and the insulin resistance gets worse and worse. The cycle feeds itself. Fatty liver creates insulin resistance, and insulin resistance prevents the liver from healing. So, what do we avoid to break this vicious cycle? Let's start with the obvious: alcohol. Too much alcohol is a straight shot to liver failure, and that's not news to anyone. But the second culprit is sugar, all forms of sugar. This includes the spoonfuls you stir into coffee, the added sugar in sauces and packaged foods, but also the natural sugars that so many people mistakenly think are harmless. This is where it gets tricky. People love to separate added sugar from natural sugar, as if natural makes it safe. But the liver doesn't care where the fructose comes from. Whether it's from candy or fruit, it's still fructose and it still clogs the liver. Let's make it practical. If you're eating watermelon slices all day, or you're piling your plate with bananas, mangoes, or pineapple thinking you're being healthy, you can easily consume 100 or even 200 grams of sugar, most of it fructose. And to your liver, that's no different than downing a couple of sodas. Now, this doesn't mean fruit is your enemy. A few berries, a handful of grapes, or an apple here and there isn't going to destroy your liver. But the idea that fruit is a free pass food is a dangerous misconception. Natural sugar, when eaten in excess, still overwhelms the liver. The next food group to be cautious about is starches. Starches are chains of glucose molecules, which means they turn directly into blood sugar. This spike in blood sugar triggers insulin. And remember, high insulin keeps the liver from burning fat. Now here's where context matters. If you've never struggled with sugar or weight, your liver is lean, and your insulin sensitivity is strong, you can tolerate starches in moderation. Your body can process them. But if you already have a fatty liver, if you're already insulin resistant, then starches make things much worse. Every serving of rice, bread, or potatoes just keeps your insulin higher and your liver more congested. And it doesn't matter much whether those starches are natural or processed. Processed foods are definitely worse because they've stripped away the fiber and made the starch absorb even faster. But between white rice and brown rice, or between white flour and whole wheat flour, the difference is minimal. Both are primarily glucose, and both will keep your insulin elevated. Now let's revisit fried foods. We touched on this earlier, but it deserves repeating. The main issue with fried foods isn't the frying itself, it's the oils used. Virtually all fried foods in restaurants or fast food chains are cooked in vegetable oils. These oils are highly unstable under heat. To even make them usable for deep frying, manufacturers refine, bleach, and deodorize them, which strips away their natural properties and leaves behind oxidized, toxic oils. These rancid oils inflame and damage the liver every time you eat them. That's why avoiding fried foods is crucial if you're trying to heal. And then, we come to a subtle but important distinction: reversing a condition vs maintaining health. This is something people misunderstand all the time. Maybe you say, I eat rice and potatoes and I feel fine. And maybe that's true because your insulin sensitivity is still intact. But there's a world of difference between maintaining health and reversing fatty liver. If your liver is already fatty and your insulin levels are sky high, feeling fine doesn't mean you're in the clear. It just means the damage is still silent. To truly reverse fatty liver, you must be far stricter than someone who's only trying to maintain good health. This leads us to one more myth that pops up everywhere: whole grains. Whole grains are celebrated on almost every healthy eating list. They're marketed as superfoods, heart protective, and essential for wellness. But what's the truth? Most of the time, when whole grains are promoted, they're simply being compared to something worse like white bread or refined sugar. Sure, whole grains are a little better than pure white flour. But let's be honest, being better than sugar is a pretty low bar. That doesn't make whole grains a miracle food. It just makes them slightly less damaging than the worst offenders. So, when you see whole grains plastered on packaging and marketed as the healthy choice, remember this: it's a comparison game, not a genuine endorsement of health. And this is where we'll pause for now. We've identified the key culprits: alcohol, fructose, toxins, insulin, starches, fried oils, and yes, even those so-called healthy whole grains. But understanding what to avoid is only half the story. In the last section, we uncovered why whole grains aren't the magic solution people are led to believe. Now, let's break that down further and clear up one of the biggest health myths of our time. Grains are often marketed as wholesome, packed with fiber, and even essential. But in reality, most of what they provide is glucose. That glucose breaks down quickly in your body, spikes blood sugar, and keeps you riding that roller coaster of highs and crashes. And every spike means more insulin fueling the very cycle that drives fatty liver. To make matters worse, grains are also among the most common food allergens. Many people are sensitive to wheat. Countless others react to gluten. Some even struggle with rice or oats. These sensitivities are far more widespread than most people realize. For someone already dealing with liver stress, this extra layer of inflammation is like throwing gasoline on a fire. Because of this, I give grains a big red X, especially for anyone trying to reverse fatty liver. That doesn't mean grains are forbidden in every situation. If you don't have a fatty liver, your insulin sensitivity is strong, and you don't react negatively to grains, you might tolerate them in small amounts. But here's the key: don't fool yourself into thinking modern wheat, or any grain for that matter, is a healing food. At best, they're tolerable. At worst, they make your liver problem harder to fix. Now, let's address the buzzword everyone loves to throw around: superfoods. People get so excited about the idea that a single food, maybe blueberries, kale, or chia seeds, has miraculous healing power. The very word superfood makes it sound like a cure-all, a magic bullet you can eat and suddenly erase years of damage. But here's the problem: that idea is misleading. Let's imagine a scenario. Say you're exposed to mercury every day. You keep ingesting it in small amounts. Is there any vitamin you could take that would actually make you healthy while the exposure continues? Of course not. That vitamin might help you tolerate the poison a little longer, but as long as mercury keeps coming in, you'll only get sicker. Or picture a lake where the fish are dying. The water is polluted and toxic. Could we pour in a supplement, some antioxidant, some superfood, and magically bring the fish back to life while pollution keeps flowing into the lake? The answer is no. Until the source of the contamination stops, nothing will change. This is the same reality with our bodies. If we keep overwhelming the liver with alcohol, fructose, starches, and toxins, there is no superfood that can reverse the damage. No pill, no berry, no powder will undo a constant onslaught. The reason so many of us buy into the superfood fantasy comes from decades of conditioning. We've been raised in an allopathic mindset, a model that trains us to treat every symptom with a remedy. Headache? Take a pill. Indigestion? Pop an antacid. Can't sleep? Swallow a sleep aid. And sure, those remedies provide relief. They block pain signals, calm acid, or knock you out for the night. But here's the catch: they don't fix the underlying problem. They don't make the body function better. They don't remove what's interfering, and they don't replace what's missing. They simply silence the signal. It's like turning off the smoke alarm while the fire still burns. You might feel more comfortable, but the damage continues. That's why there's really no such thing as a superfood in the way it's marketed. The label makes us believe one food can cancel out years of damage, but it simply doesn't work that way. True health doesn't come from covering up symptoms. It comes from removing the source of harm and giving the body space to heal. And when it comes to fatty liver, that means more than sprinkling chia seeds on your smoothie or adding quinoa to your salad. Those foods might be better choices compared to candy bars or fried dough, but they're not remedies. If the underlying overload isn't addressed, the damage continues no matter how many superfoods you eat. So here's the takeaway: don't fall for the marketing hype. Healing your liver requires real lifestyle changes, not miracle foods. And that's where we're headed next. In the upcoming section, we'll shift from busting myths to exploring the real nutritional strategies that support your liver's recovery. You'll see how to stop the overload, lower the pressure, and finally allow this amazing organ to repair itself. As we just discussed, there's no such thing as a miracle superfood. Real health comes from removing what harms the body and restoring what's missing. And that's exactly where a holistic model makes all the difference. Instead of chasing symptoms and quick remedies, the holistic approach asks a simple question: what's the root cause? If something is missing, we replace it. If something is interfering, we help the body eliminate it. When that happens, the symptom disappears not because we've silenced the signal, but because the real problem has been solved. Function improves, balance returns, and the body starts to heal itself. That's why I always remind people, food isn't about super or magical. There are simply good foods that support the body and bad foods that interfere with it. Nothing more, nothing less. Unsaturated fats, the good and the bad. Let's clear up one of the most persistent myths. Saturated fat is bad, unsaturated fat is good. That's not the full story. The truth depends on the type of unsaturated fat and how it's used. The first type is monounsaturated fats, or MUFAs. These are a true macronutrient, something we consume in meaningful amounts that give us calories and energy. You'll find them in foods like extra virgin olive oil, avocados, and even meat. People often assume all meat fat is saturated, but that's not true. About half of the fat in meat is actually monounsaturated. Humans are the same. Roughly half of our stored body fat is monounsaturated, and the other half is saturated. That's simply the way our bodies and nature store energy. So far, MUFAs get a big green check mark. But there's one condition: they must be minimally processed. That's why extra virgin olive oil is so highly valued. It's cold-pressed, handled gently, and retains its stability and nutrients. The second type, however, is polyunsaturated fats, or PUFAs, and here's where confusion begins. Unlike MUFAs, polyunsaturated fats are highly unstable. Their molecular structure is squiggly, with multiple weak points that make them reactive. To turn these fragile oils into something usable for frying or long shelf life, manufacturers put them through harsh processing, bleaching, deodorizing, refining. The result is oxidized, toxic, and highly inflammatory oils. And when these oils are used as a major macronutrient, think vegetable oils replacing butter or lard, the damage to the liver can be enormous. That's why MUFAs deserve the green check, while PUFAs, especially refined vegetable oils, get a big red X. Soy and beans. A closer look next on the list are soybeans and other legumes. You'll find them on nearly every politically correct health list. The claims often sound impressive. Beans may help with blood sugar. Beans may improve insulin resistance. But these comparisons are misleading. Most of the time, beans are simply compared to worse foods like white bread. And yes, beans are better than white bread. But that doesn't mean they're great for reversing fatty liver. Here's another problem. The vast majority of soybeans grown today are genetically modified. On top of that, soy ranks among the top allergens worldwide. Many people have sensitivities to soy, and when they eat it, they trigger inflammation, exactly what we want to avoid when trying to heal the liver. So where does that leave us? For most people, soy is not recommended. At best, I give it a question mark and a red X. If you do tolerate beans well, and you're already insulin sensitive, small amounts of organic lentils, tofu, or miso might be acceptable. But if you're struggling with fatty liver and high insulin, beans aren't going to move you forward. Oatmeal, fiber or false promise. Another food that makes its way onto countless healthy food lists is oatmeal. You've probably heard the line, fiber-rich foods like oatmeal are good for you. But notice how vague that sounds. Grouping foods together without explaining why they might help isn't real science. Yes, oatmeal contains fiber, but the real question is, does it support liver healing, or does it keep the insulin roller coaster going? That's what we need to explore in the next section. So, to sum up this part, not all fats are created equal. Soy and beans aren't the miracle foods they're advertised to be, and oatmeal deserves a closer look before we call it healthy. As we saw earlier, not every so-called health food really supports the liver. Some are overhyped, others are tolerable in small amounts, and a few can even make things worse. Let's keep moving down the list and look closely at the next group of foods people often get confused about. Oatmeal. friend or false promise. You'll often hear research claiming oatmeal may lower cholesterol. But if you read closely, most of those studies are just comparing oatmeal to white bread. And yes, oatmeal is better than white bread. That's a very low bar. Does that automatically make oatmeal a healing food? Not really. At its core, oatmeal is still mostly starch. It breaks down quickly into glucose and spikes blood sugar, which means more insulin. On top of that, oats carry another problem: gluten sensitivity. Unless you buy oats that are specifically certified gluten-free, most packages contain traces of gluten. Even if you do buy certified oats, there's a phenomenon called cross-reaction. The molecular markers on oats resemble gluten enough that in many people, especially those who already react to gluten, the immune system mistakes oats for gluten and triggers the same inflammatory response. Now, that doesn't mean everyone has to avoid oats forever. Some people do just fine with them. But if you're dealing with fatty liver, the story changes. At best, oats are neutral. At worst, they keep blood sugar and insulin high, making it harder for the liver to recover. If you do choose oats, go for steel-cut oats, since they're less processed and release glucose more slowly. But avoid instant oats altogether. Those are barely better than candy. Overall, for anyone trying to reverse liver disease, oats get a red X. If your health is strong and you tolerate them, they're not the worst food, but don't count on them to heal your liver. Coffee. The most debated beverage. Next up is coffee. Few foods have been studied as much or debated as fiercely. Many reports suggest coffee may protect against fatty liver, or that it's associated with lower rates of liver disease. But notice the wording, may, associated with. What's missing is a clear explanation of how it works. That always makes me ask, compared to what? If researchers study 1 million coffee drinkers, who are they comparing them to? Chances are, the non-coffee group was drinking more soda, sweet tea, or energy drinks. So in the end, coffee often looks good simply because it's better than the alternatives. That said, I don't consider coffee harmful for most people. In fact, I drink it myself. 2 cups a day for most healthy adults is perfectly fine. Where I'd be cautious is if you have weakened adrenals or are already stressed. In that case, 6 cups a day could be counterproductive. But in moderation, coffee earns a green light. Just don't think of it as a superfood that will reverse fatty liver. It won't. Walnuts. A satisfying choice. And oh, let's talk about walnuts. In my opinion, walnuts are a genuinely good food. They're high in protein and healthy fats, low in carbohydrates, and very satisfying. That combination helps reduce insulin and supports reversing insulin resistance. But here's the catch. Walnuts aren't magical. They're not better than other nuts like macadamias or pecans, which are also low carb, high fat, and nutrient dense. So yes, walnuts earn a big green check mark, but eating more and more won't necessarily give you extra benefits. Think of them as a solid part of a good diet, not as a superpower food. Omega-3s. Essential, but choose wisely. Finally, let's talk about omega-3 fatty acids. This is where things get interesting, because unlike many of the foods we've covered so far, omega-3s really do address the root cause of disease. Omega-3s are a type of polyunsaturated fat that our bodies can't make on their own. We need them in small amounts for specific purposes. The best sources are fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, and sardines or fish oil supplements. Unlike the unstable vegetable oils we discussed earlier, omega-3s have strong research backing their benefits. They are anti-inflammatory, support cardiovascular health, and directly counteract the mechanisms behind metabolic syndrome and fatty liver. That's why omega-3s earn a green check mark. They're one of the rare nutrients with a clear, proven role in reversing damage. But here's an important distinction. Not all omega-3s are equal. Flaxseed, for example, is high in omega-3s, but the type it provides isn't what your body actually needs. To be useful, flax omega-3s must be converted into EPA and DHA, the active forms that bring real benefits. And here's the problem. Only a small percentage of people can make that conversion efficiently. If you're already healthy, you might convert some flax oil into EPA and DHA. But if you're dealing with fatty liver, insulin resistance, or other metabolic issues, your conversion rate will likely be very poor. That's why relying on flaxseed oil for omega-3s can leave you disappointed. To truly help your liver, you need the EPA and DHA from fish or fish oil. So, to sum it up, oatmeal isn't the healing food it's marketed to be. Coffee is fine in moderation but not a cure. Walnuts are a solid part of a healthy diet, and omega-3s, especially from fish, are one of the most powerful tools you can use to fight inflammation and support liver recovery. In the last section, we saw why omega-3s from fish or eggs are far more powerful than plant-based sources like flax. That point is so important it's worth repeating. The very people who need omega-3s the most, those struggling with fatty liver, insulin resistance, or chronic inflammation, are the least able to convert flax oil into the active forms EPA and DHA. That's why depending on flax is a losing strategy. Now, I'll be honest with you. I still enjoy flax seeds. I like grinding them fresh and sprinkling them over yogurt with chia seeds. But I don't do it for omega-3s. I do it because I enjoy the texture, the fiber, and the taste. The key is this: I never fool myself into thinking flax is a superfood. Omega-3s, in their true usable form, are not meant to be a major energy source like fat or carbs. Think of them instead as a micronutrient like a vitamin or mineral. You only need small amounts, but those small amounts are critical. They build cell membranes, form hormone precursors, and allow countless processes in your body to function properly. And the best, most reliable sources are fatty fish, high-quality eggs, or a clean fish oil supplement. Cruciferous vegetables. Nature's liver helpers. Number 3 on the list is cruciferous greens. The word cruciferous comes from the Latin for cross, referring to the cross-shaped flowers these plants grow. But their real magic lies in their phytonutrients, compounds that actively support the liver's detoxification systems. Foods like arugula, bok choy, Brussels sprouts, and broccoli are at the top of this group. But it doesn't stop there. Cabbage, cauliflower, kale, and even rutabaga fall into this powerful category. Each of these vegetables provides unique compounds that work like reinforcements for your liver, helping it process toxins and restore balance. The beauty of cruciferous vegetables is that, for most people, they can be eaten freely. The only one I'd suggest limiting is rutabaga, since it contains a bit more starch. Even then, it's processed slowly in the body, so the impact isn't dramatic. Of course, sensitivities still matter. If your body doesn't tolerate these vegetables, if they cause digestive distress, then they aren't good for you personally. But for the majority, cruciferous vegetables are some of the most supportive foods you can eat. Meat. One of the most misunderstood foods. Number 2 on my list is meat, and I want to be clear, I added this one myself, because strangely, it doesn't show up on other so-called superfood lists. Why? Because of decades of misinformation and fear around saturated fat and cholesterol. Let's set the record straight. Meat is one of the most nutrient-dense, satisfying foods available. It's loaded with high-quality protein, rich in vitamins and minerals, and provides both saturated and monounsaturated fats, the stable, non-inflammatory types of fat your body can rely on for energy once insulin levels are under control. Another point in meat's favor is its low allergenic profile. More and more people today struggle with food sensitivities. Wheat, soy, dairy, legumes, the list goes on. But beef? For many, it's the least allergenic food of all. That's one reason why the carnivore diet has exploded in popularity. It's not just about preference, it's about simplicity. Meat is clean fuel for the body. Meat is also a powerful source of methionine, a sulfur-containing amino acid. Why does that matter? Because your body uses methionine to produce glutathione, your body's most powerful antioxidant and detoxifier. Glutathione helps neutralize free radicals, reduce oxidative stress, and protect every cell in your body. So when you eat meat, you're not just getting protein, you're helping your body generate its own internal defense system. If you can let go of the misplaced fear of saturated fat and focus on lowering insulin resistance, meat becomes not only safe, but profoundly beneficial. It earns a strong place near the top of my list. Eggs, the undisputed champion. Finally, number 1 on my list is eggs. And once again, I didn't see this food on anyone else's list, likely because of the same misplaced fears about cholesterol and fat. But eggs are nothing short of extraordinary. Eggs pack nearly everything your body needs to thrive. They provide protein, healthy fats, vitamins, and minerals in a perfectly balanced package. But what makes eggs truly special is choline, a nutrient that acts as a catalyst for fat metabolism. Choline is one of the few nutrients proven to help your body burn fat in the liver itself. If you want to reverse fatty liver, choline is a must-have, and eggs are one of the best natural sources. Eggs also deliver vitamins B6, B9, and B12, which play a critical role in processing homocysteine, a harmful inflammatory compound. With the help of these B vitamins, your body converts homocysteine into methionine, and then into glutathione, that same master antioxidant we talked about with meat. And let's not forget, eggs are a direct source of EPA and DHA, the exact omega-3s your body needs. If you buy high-quality, pasture-raised eggs, the concentration of these fatty acids can be several times higher than conventional eggs. That means with the right eggs, you're not just getting protein and vitamins, you're fueling your body with anti-inflammatory nutrients that directly support liver repair. For all these reasons, eggs earn a big green check mark. They're not only safe but transformative when it comes to liver health. Bringing it all together, so, after working through this entire journey, what have we learned? The path to healing your liver doesn't lie in chasing after trendy superfoods or falling for marketing hype. It lies in understanding the real causes of liver overload: alcohol, fructose, toxins, insulin, unstable oils, and removing them. Then, by choosing foods that support the liver's natural ability to heal, like cruciferous vegetables, nutrient-rich meat, and choline-packed eggs, you give your body the chance to repair itself. There's no magic pill, no miracle berry, and no overnight cure. But there's a clear path forward. By taking the pressure off your liver and fueling it with the right foods, you can turn fatty liver around, restore your health, and reclaim your energy. If you've made it this far, it means you're serious about your health, and that's something to celebrate. You now understand what really matters when it comes to protecting your liver. But this is just the beginning. There's so much more to discover about how the body truly works, and I'm here to guide you every step of the way. So, if you found this video helpful, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to Senior Health Boost, and turn on notifications so you never miss another life-saving video. Together, we can cut through the myths, uncover the truth, and build lasting health the way it was meant to be. Because your health is too important to leave to chance, let's take charge of it, one choice at a time.